Untrodden Peaks and Unfrequented Valleys, Section 16. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Untrodden Peaks and Unfrequented Valleys, A Midsummer Ramble Through the Dolomites, by Amelia B. Edwards. Chapter 7. Caprile, Part 1. The time at length came when we must bid good-bye to Cortina. It was a place in which many more days might have been spent with pleasure and profit. The walks were endless, the sketching was endless, the climate perfect. Still, we had already overstayed the time originally set apart in our program for the Ampezzo district. We had made all the most accessible excursions about the neighborhood, and with the whole of that great Italian Dolomite center that lies beyond the Tre Sassi ridge yet unexplored, it was plain that we could ill afford to linger longer on the Austrian border. At the same time, Cortina, just because it lies upon the border, is in danger of being too hastily dismissed by travelers coming in from the Conegliano side. Marvelous as its surrounding mountains are, a stranger is apt to conclude that they but open the way to still greater marvels, and to regard the Ampezzo Thal as only the threshold of wonderland. Even Mr. Gilbert, visiting Cortina for the first time in 1861, as he himself tells, stayed only one night there, and never ceased to regret the omission till another Tyrolean tour enabled him to repair it. For myself, looking back in memory across that intervening sea of peaks and passes which lies between Botzen and Cortina, I am inclined to place the Ampezzo Dolomites in the very first rank, both as regards position and structure. The mountains of Primiero are more extravagantly wild in outline, the Marmolata carries more ice and snow, the Civita is more beautiful, the solitary giants of the Caesar Alp are more imposing, but taken as a group I know nothing, whether for size, variety, or picturesqueness, to equal that great circle which, within a radius of less than 12 miles from the doors of the Aquila Nera, includes the Pelmo, Antelao, Marmarole, Croda Malcora, Cristallo, and Tofana. It was time, however, as I have said, for us to be moving onward. A practised mountaineer would doubtless find more than enough employment for a whole season within this one area, but we, who were not mountaineers in any sense of the word, had now done our duty very fairly by the place, and so, not without reluctance, were bound to seek fresh woods and pastures new. Nothing, in short, could have been pleasanter than staying, except going. Our next point being Caprile, it was arranged that we should ride over the Tre Sassi Pass and send the luggage by caretta. Giuseppe, always economical, proposed a second caretta for the signoras, adding that the Char road was a little rough on the side of Caprile. We, however, had already found it more than a little rough on the side of Cortona, and, being impressed with a lively recollection of the horrors of that drive, declined to pursue the experiment any farther. Also, it was necessary to make sure of getting a side-saddle. By taking horses and riding over the pass we should at least get it as far as Caprile. Possession so far would be something gained. I am bound to confess that beyond that point our intentions, though vague, were decidedly felonious. The morning was exquisite when we started. The caretta went first, driven by our polite friend of the other day, and we followed about half an hour later. The procession consisted of 2 riding horses, Fuchs the chestnut and Moro the black, a mule for the maid, the 2 elder Ghedinas, Giuseppe and Giovanni. The Ghedinas were there to lead the horses when necessary, and to bring them home tomorrow, while Giovanni, inasmuch as the mule's present rider had never before mounted anything more spirited than a Sorrento donkey, had strict orders to stay by that animal's head, and never to leave his post for an instant. And indeed a less inexperienced rider might well have been excused a shade of nervousness, for the road was often steep, and often skirted the brink of very unpleasant-looking precipices, while the promised basta, destitute alike of rail and pommel, proved to be neither more nor less than a bundle of cushions and sheepskins, strapped upon a man's saddle, with no real support save a stirrup. In this order, then, we finally started, taking our former route in the direction of Falzarego, and casting many a backward glance at the mountains we were leaving behind us. Arrived once more at the little hospice, the Signora Cuoca was welcomed with acclamations. Again leaving the public room for the use of the padrona's bright little kitchen, again the eggs and butter, the glittering brass pan, the long brass ladle and the big apron were produced, and again the author covered herself with glory. It may have been the peculiar quality of the air on this particular pass, or it may have been the result of an exaggerated degree of self-approbation, but those Falzarego eggs did certainly seem, on both occasions, to transcend in delicacy and richness of flavour all other eggs with which the present writer had ever had the pleasure of becoming acquainted. It was our destiny to be overtaken by rain and mist on the Tre Sassi. Before we left the hospice, a few uncertain drops were already beginning to fall, and by the time we reached the summit, the Marmolata was gleaming in the same ghostly way as before, through fast-gathering vapours. From this point all is new. Skirting first the base of Monte Laguzzi, then of the abrupt crag locally known as the Sasso d'Istria, we pass close above some large unmelted snowdrifts, and so down into a steep, romantic glen traversed by a clear torrent, musical with many a fall, and crossed every here and there by a narrow bridge of roughly hewn pine trunks. Sometimes, where there is no bridge, the water sparkles all across the path, and those on foot have to spring from stone to stone as best they may. Dark firs and larches, growing thicker and closer as the dell dips deeper, make a green gloom overhead. Ferns, mosses, and wildflowers grow in lush luxuriance all over the steep banks, and carpet every hollow. Gaunt peaks are seen now and then through openings in the boughs, as if suspended high up in the misty air. And ever the descending path winds in and out among huge boulders covered with bushes and many-coloured lichens. And now as we go on, the sky darkens more and more. Then a light, steady mist begins to fall, the mist turns to rain, the rain becomes a storm, and the mountains echo back a long low peal of distant thunder. Meanwhile the road has become very steep and slippery, and the horses keep their feet with difficulty. Then the glen turns and widens, and Castel d'Andraz, a shattered, blank-eyed ruin perched high upon a pedestal of crag, comes suddenly into sight. Steep precipices skirt the ruin on one side, and upland pastures on the other. A green valley opens away beyond, and the grassy slope beside the bridle path is full of large, wild orange lilies and crimson dog roses that flame like jewels in a ray of sunshine which breaks at this moment through the clouds. Not even the sheets of rain still pelting pitilessly down can blot out the wonderful beauty of the view, or reconcile me to the impossibility of stopping then and there to sketch it. We ride on, however, for fully 3/4 of an hour more, stumbling over wet stones and sliding down steps hewn in the solid rock, till at length the little hamlet of Andraz, half hidden among trees and precipices, and framed in overhead by a magnificent fragment of rainbow, appears in welcome proximity close beneath our feet. Another turn of the road, and we are there. The men are wet through, the horses are streaming, the rain runs in rivers off our waterproof cloaks, our umbrellas are portable gargoyles. In this state we alight at the door of Finazer's tiny hostelry and birreria, a very small, clean, humble place, where, having taken off our wettest outer garments and dried ourselves thoroughly at a blazing kitchen fire, we order hot coffee and prepare to make the best of our position till the sky clears again. Never was there such a toy parlour as that into which we are ushered on coming out of the kitchen. It is all pine wood, new, bright, fragrant, cinnamon-coloured pine wood, shining like gold. Walls, floor, ceiling are all alike, and it is perfectly square, too, in every way, like a beautiful new box of Sorrento or Tunbridge ware. You might have turned it up endwise, or sidewise, or topsy-turvy, and but for the altered position of the door, I would defy the most sagacious architect to find out the difference. Then the chairs, the tables, the corner cupboards, the clock case, all are of the same material. Everything in that room, in short, is pine wood, except the grate. There are certain toy stalls in the Soho Bazaar where, at the cost of a few shillings, one may at any time buy just such wooden furniture in miniature. By and by the rain ceases, the clouds part, the sun breaks out, the horses are brought round, and for the third time that day we again push on for Caprile. And now, not far below this point, the valley of the Cordevole, the fairest and most sylvan we have yet seen, a valley less Italian in character than the Val d'Auronzo, more Swiss than the Ampezzo Thal, rich in corn, maize, hemp, flax, and pasture, and bounded in the far distance by great shadowy mountains patched and streaked with snow, about whose flanks rent storm clouds drift and gather, like the waves of an angry sea. That one of these is the Boé, which we come to know hereafter as a bastion of the Sella plateau, and that another is the Monte Padon, are facts to be taken for the present upon trust. The Marmolata is also dimly traceable now and then, and presently a blurred, gigantic mass, so enveloped in mist as to show no definite outline of any kind, is pointed out as the Civita. Meanwhile the bridle path, carried at an immense height along the shoulder of Monte Frisolade, follows every curve of the mountain, now commanding the valley of Livinallungo to the northwest, now coming in sight of a corner of the blue lake beyond Caprile to the south, now winding along the face of an almost vertical precipice, now skirting the borders of a pine forest, now striking across a slope of greenest pasture, and at every turn disclosing some new vista more beautiful than the last. Tiny villages, some 1,000 feet below, some 1,000 feet above the level of our path, are scattered far and wide, each with its little white church and picturesque campanile. Sometimes one, sometimes another of these, stands out for a few moments in brilliant sunshine, then, as the clouds drive by, sinks away again into shadow. These vivid, alternating passages of light and shade, followed by the intense gloom of another gathering storm, now coming rapidly up from the valleys behind the Marmolata, altogether defy description. And now, anxious if possible to escape another drenching, we hurry on, stared at by all who meet us as if no such cavalcade had ever before found its way along this mountain track. Passing presently through the little village of Collaz, we attract the whole population to their doors and windows, and two very old priests, standing by the church door, pull off their hats and bow to the ground as we ride by. End of section 16.